Well, welcome everybody. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Lori. I am the Deputy Director here at Raíces Cyber. Incredibly excited to have you all with us, and we have a very special person today. She's a good friend of mine, and a very special session lined up. Gloria, who is a Technical Account Manager at Google, will be sharing her experience with AI. Gloria brings over 25 years of experience in customer success, technical management, and sales. And we're very fortunate to have her not just as a guest, but she's also a leader in the Maryland chapter for Raíces. Today, she'll be sharing her extensive experience in artificial intelligence with the foundations of AI. And just a quick housekeeping notes. We have reserved 20 minutes at the end of the presentation for Q&A. So please hold your questions until the end, keep your notes at hand, and we'll make sure to get to them. Thank you, Gloria, for your dedication. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Lori, for the great introduction. And hopefully I will not freeze out. I saw a little freeze there. So again, my name is Gloria Reyes, Technical Account Manager at Google, and I'm also a adjunct instructor at Howard Community College in Columbia, Maryland, where I teach in both cybersecurity and cloud courses. So hopefully you guys will get something useful out of this presentation, but we are going to go ahead and move it along. The first thing I wanted to do is just go over the fundamentals of AI, because you may or may not understand or know the differences when you talk about AI in terms of the different areas that you can focus on. So AI or artificial intelligence as a whole is in all honesty a marketing term. It is a very generalized category of different technologies that do different things. So we are going to dive into at a high level a few of those areas. So the idea behind AI is really just the science of making computers do tasks that normally require human intelligence. And as we progress with AI and technology, we are getting more and more human-like results, right, from the AI that we're using. So again, at a very high level, with AI, we are creating machines that are going to perform tasks that typically humans perform. The way that it works is that we are using rule sets, typically on the compute level, to provide very complex machine learning models that are generating all kinds of different results. And examples that we have that you may be using now or are using or will use are virtual assistants, search engines, recommendation systems, self-driving cars, our bots that we talk to when we go to any website. Those are all part of artificial intelligence. And just taking a step back, the way that AI has evolved, first of all, the way that it evolves and everything kind of works together is we have something called data science, which basically is used to organize data and gain insights, right? We have good old-fashioned AI, which uses rules to perform specific tasks. Machine learning uses models to make predictions. Deep learning can take action autonomously, meaning that it basically self-learns. Large language models generate human-like answers and can create content. And that is typically where most folks that are not in the tech industry or in certain type of industries, where you're using AI the most. And we'll talk about that. And then generative AI, or Gen AI, which is using AI to create things. And like I said, AI is already here, right? You're using apps like Google Maps that are GPS apps that will help you with navigation, right? It's going to help find the fastest route. It's going to avoid traffic in real time and also learn from your typical driving patterns and recommend when you first get on, instead of even having to think about what you're going to click on for an address, most of the time it'll provide you with work or with a certain place that you go to on Saturday mornings if you have a routine. So it does that. It gives you recommendations, right? So you can go to Netflix or YouTube, and it will learn the algorithms behind Netflix and YouTube will learn your preferences and will suggest to you what to watch next. Also, something like Spotify, where you continuously like songs, it will immediately start recommending to you based on your likes, songs and things or podcasts that you may want to listen to. And then things like spam filters are used by larger organizations or providers where we'll automatically identify and sort junk mail from important messages, although I think that's a work in progress for some of our email providers, but it does do that at the back end through AI. And then some common AI categories that we can think about are computer vision, right? AI that sees and understands images, videos. It could be used for things like self-driving cars and medical image analysis. With the self-driving cars, we are seeing, companies like Waymo that are providing through Uber self-driving cars in more and more cities. So this is something that highly impacts us in the real world, right? We can look at natural language or NLP, and that's where AI understands human language. It powers virtual assistants, chatbots, and translation apps. And then speech recognition, AI that converts spoken words to text, powers voice to text, virtual assistants, and automated captions, and also actually translates, right? We have quite a few apps that you can have on your phone now that if you talk, you let it listen to language, right? In another speech in another language, it will actually translate to the language of choice. So how does AI learn, right? Because we have all of these amazing apps and websites and things that we can use or tools that we can use that use AI, but how are AI models and algorithms trained, right? So the first area to think about is machine learning. And machine learning kind of predates generative AI and like what we typically think of AI, like LLMs and all that. This is the first area that used a large amount of data to teach machines to do something. So ML is a subset of AI, right? And what it does is there's rules that are set up. You feed the system data, and as you feed the system data, it will find patterns and makes predictions. It is typically the engine that powers most modern AI applications. So at the back end, ML is typically what's powering almost anything that we're using that's AI based. Now, what's the difference between AI and versus machine learning? So AI is typically the big idea, right? It is what all the different technologies that use some type of machine learning encompass, right? For example, if you have a sorting robot that's coded to sort blue and red marbles, if it sees a green one, it won't know what to do, right? That's just, it hasn't been taught. But with ML, right, which is the method, it is the engine that makes the machine smart. It is the specific system that makes the rocket fly in this case, right? And if you say, hey, you know, I'm going to feed this machine thousands of images of fans, and fans we mean by sports fans, right? It learns to identify the team logo and can predict if a new image is a fan, right? The key takeaway here is that all machine learning is AI, but not all AI is machine learning, and we're going to get into that. Where is ML typically built, right? As you start thinking about what areas or companies or areas of focus, industries that you want to, you know, maybe in the future possibly work, these are some of the bigger providers that actually build them out. And to give you an example, Google Cloud, which I work for, offers Vertex AI or Gemini Enterprise. And that's a unified platform for building, training, and scaling custom ML models. So if you're going to look at ML, Vertex AI is going to be where you're using Google. For Amazon or AWS, you're going to look at something like SageMaker. It's a popular end-to-end service, and it is what Amazon offers for machine learning. And then with Azure, we can look at Azure Machine Learning, and it's a cloud service for managing and deploying machine learning models. So it's good to know where, what products or what technologies many of these large companies use, because as you go out into the real world, some company is going to be using either one or two or even three of these, or even other cloud providers as they're doing things. And it's good to understand the lingo and to understand what technologies drive at the back end machine learning and AI. So next area that we're going to focus on is large learning models. And this is the typically where I see day-to-day that people actually know what AI is, right? LLMs are a type of ML model, right? They're trained on a massive amount of text, like the entire internet, right? So you are feeding the entire internet into these LLMs. And then they are essentially language generators. So they take what they learn from the internet and they spit that back to you when you ask it a question, right? So like I said, they're gonna predict what the most likely word in a sentence is over and over. And that's how it actually creates human-like text. And examples of this, again, day-to-day products that folks use are ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, and many, many others, right? They're all powered by LLMs at the back end. And again, it's more of a conversational type exercise where the LLM is learning as it gets information or data fed to it, and then it kind of spits it back to you in a human-like form where you're able to understand it, and it predicts what it should be providing to you based on what you've asked. So what can these LLMs do? We can do content creation, right? I mean, it could write a whole blog for you if you wanted to. It could write up social media updates, even poetry, even though it might not be so great, but it can do that. You can use it for coding and development, right? You can generate, debug, and explain complex code in different multiple programming languages, which is really cool. It allows brainstorming. So we actually use this to come up with some ideas on how to celebrate the holidays in one of the teams I'm on, right? So you could say, hey, I want to, I want to get some ideas on how to, I don't know, celebrate Christmas or put a Christmas celebration together. And it'll give you a bunch of ideas. And then it can translate and summarize, right? So like I said, you can have it learn, either read or view or listen to another language, and then it will translate it for you in the language of choice. And that can be verbally, through as an email, through reports, or whatever. All right. And then some of the major LLMs in the market that you should be aware of, right? Gemini is what Google provides, and it is a natively multimodal. And what that means is that it can take anything, a picture, text, or visual text, even audio, and then use that to actually provide you with what you're looking for, right? GPT, now we're at 5, I believe, but that's provided by OpenAI, right? ChatGPT. It is very famous, right? Because it is very powerful. It does all of the above from what I mentioned before. And then Claude, which is Anthropic, it's known for its large content window. It can read a book, and a strong focus on AI safety and ethics. We're going to talk about ethics as well. And then generative AI is where we are now. And we're starting to also kind of get a little past generative AI with agents or agentic AI. I'm not going to get into that just because this is more of a intro to this. We are going to have several other sessions in the future, and we were going to get into other topics with other folks that have expertise. So I just wanted to give you an intro, so we'll get as far as here. So generative AI is a type of AI that creates new content, such as text, images, music, or code. The way that it works is that it uses models to generate novel inputs, meaning new, never seen before inputs or outputs, sorry, which can include LLMs for text, but also other models for different media types, right? So for example, Banana Nana, which is like a trending AI, generative AI model is actually to provide video. It outputs videos, right? But there are a ton of different other examples of models that can give you a bunch of different outputs depending on what you're looking for. The point is that they all work under the more advanced kind of part of AI where it's actually creating new content. And so where we get into with that is, how do we ethically do this, right? Because it is an interesting place where we are now, where we're using technology to create new artifacts, basically new things. And how are we going to do this so that it's ethical, right? Because the guardrails that we currently have in some product sets kind of vary. So some of them will be very, very strict on allowing for known content to be used when you're generating new content. And then some of them are not quite as great at doing that, right? So as a user, you have to start thinking about, how are you using AI ethically? So the areas that we think about with that, right, that we should focus on are, one, fairness, right? We want to ensure that AI systems are not discriminating or perpetuate existing societal biases against any group. I'll get a little into that in terms of the data that we're feeding. The data that an LLM learns from is what's being fed to it by whoever. And so if the data that is being fed into the model comes from a biased source, it is going to actually spit out biased results. It learns from what you are feeding it. When you're looking at something like the internet, where you have a ton of different data sources from a ton of different, places, there's going to be a bias there that can kind of get into the data that you're feeding the LLMs that's going to actually be spit back out. So there has to be some care in what you are providing to these LLMs or models when you're teaching them, so that they're actually not biased. And that is a work in progress right now. Transparency is another area of concern. We want to make sure that what the operations of AI systems are visible and understandable to whoever's using, right? Whether it's the stakeholders, let's say a company that's using a model to run something that they have on their website. For example, there were some interesting results from different companies that were using chatbots and were not careful in what they were feeding the models at the back end. And when it spit out answers to the users, it was insulting them, right? And it was providing them with information that was not good, right, to the user. So we have to understand what's going into these models so that we can make sure that we are being careful on what the models are, or what the tools that we're using the models as at the back end are actually doing when they're being used. We also want accountability, right? We want to define clear lines of responsibility for the outcomes and errors produced by AI systems. As these AI systems are used to model things in healthcare, if some type of information is given that is wrong, that could lead to really bad results for someone that's depending on the information that particular tool they're using, right, is providing them. So we have to be very careful on how we find ourselves being accountable for the outputs of the models that we use at the back end. And then privacy, right? Depending on the country that you live in, you are expecting privacy. You're expecting that your data is not going to be used, if you don't want it to be used, to feed and grow those models that are at the back end. So with privacy, we're protecting user data through consent, anonymity, right? We don't want the data that is being fed from a user to actually allow them to be identified, right? And we want to be sure that there are some robust cybersecurity measures in place as we're using these models to protect privacy. So like I was saying before, there is a very big challenge with bias when we're using AI systems, right? Because it does use historical data to learn. The more data it's using, the more, or the higher chance there is that it's going to be biased. So if it's left unchecked, the algorithms can amplify things like discrimination, right? So if we're using, let's say, in a HR system where you are, filtering or looking at resumes that are coming in, and you're trying to filter through them or sift through them and see who you want to move on to, let's say, a conversation. If the algorithm that's using that the HR system is using to filter those resumes has some ingrained bias, it may actually not bring to the forefront resumes from folks from different backgrounds or something, just because of the bias that's in the algorithm. That can lead to discrimination, right? And then there's all kinds of interesting cases of, let's say, for law enforcement, that the biometrics of someone was fed into a database. It was used in one of the AI tools, and it identified someone that was not the correct person as the person that had some law enforcement issues. And that type of scenario is a nightmare, right? So we want to try to avoid having these type of issues by actually building in very, very strict guardrails and auditing processes around the data and the whole process that we're using to feed the models at the back end, right? We want to make sure humans are in the loop. Want to make sure that the humans are testing consistently and vigorously all of the models that they're using to power the tools that they are using that are related to AI before it's deployed out into the public. Another issue that comes up that is a big issue in AI is with the deep learning models. It's very difficult to understand how they're doing what they're doing, right? Like, how are they coming up with some of the new content that they're creating? How are they coming up with the answers that are given when someone asks a question? Is that question, are those questions being answered correctly? We hear about, and I didn't really talk about it in this presentation, but we hear about hallucinations with AI models, where it provides the model, like a chatbot, will provide you with an answer that's incorrect, and you question it, right? Because maybe you realize it's incorrect, and it will continue to make up things to reinforce what it's provided you as an answer that's incorrect, right? So how are we at the back end making sure that that doesn't happen with the tools that we're providing to our users? Again, we need to be able to trust the logic behind the machine that's providing these answers. We want to make sure that there's regulation and that we are complying to regulatory requirements, like, let's say, in Europe, GDPR, right, where it's a very, very strict data privacy law that's in place for European citizens, right? We want to make sure that we are complying with those regulatory requirements that we have based on where we're located and where our tools are located. And we also want to make sure that our engineers at the back end are very quickly fixing problems that they find. So if a bunch of people are complaining that the chatbot that they're interacting with is providing crazy answers, right? Like, I don't know, answers that are insulting them or something like that, then you want to make sure that at the back end, someone say, oh yeah, let's fix that right away, right? Because if you just let that problem fester, then it takes away from the power of AI and what it's supposed to be used for. And then I touched on privacy, right? But there is so much data that gets fed into models, and it is a lot of information that's being fed into the models, right? Personal information, biometrics, depending on what tools you're using, certain behavioral, behavior information, and personal data that really does, can be used in the wrong hands for things that data should not be used for, right? So we want to make sure that we're only collecting, in terms of best practices, we're only collecting the minimum amount of data that we need to get the job done for the tool. We want to make sure that we have informed consent that's clear to our end users, so that if they don't want certain information to be used to be fed into a model, that actually isn't done. And then we want to also make sure that we're using federated learning to train models locally. And keeping in mind all of the different regulatory and compliance requirements we have to make sure that the information that's being fed into the models is going to be it's going to be hygienically good. All right. Obviously, we are at the point of human AI collaboration. Every company that you could ever think of is using some form of AI with their employees and their users, right? There is an interesting thought around chain of responsibility with AI, because at the end of the day, an algorithm cannot be sued or jailed. So if an algorithm provides information that's incorrect and something happens, or there have been cases of chat bots that have had interactions with vulnerable people that end up doing things they should not do. It's very difficult to say, hey, company XYZ, your algorithm at the back end of your tool has caused a problem, right? So we have to make sure that when we're using these AI models, that we are doing our due diligence as humans to make sure that the interactions that others are having with the tools that we are powering with AI are actually not doing things that are ethically a problem, right? We want to make sure we use those governance frameworks that are out there that are readily available to guide us in making sure that we're providing tools that are ethically sound. Again, critical decisions should not be automated. We want human oversight at every step of the process when it comes to AI and how we're using that within the tool sets that we have. So how are companies using AI, right? We have service operations, right? They use AI-powered chatbots for 24/7 customer support and automating repetitive service tasks. So in some ways that makes a lot of sense. If you just want to provide information to your end users on things that are typically on the site and someone can just do a search and look it up, that's a great use of a chatbot for that, right? Because it's an easy way for a user to ask a very direct question and get an answer instead of having to sift through a bunch of information. So that's a good use of AI, right? Of a chatbot. And anything that's overly repetitive is a great way to create efficiencies for your work base if you use certain AI tools. There is a way that these models are accelerating research because of the amount of massive data that they can actually sift through to get trends and analyze. So it's super cool to use them for thinking about new product designs or optimizing manufacturing processes, or creating some new tools that maybe you're thinking about but are not sure how to actually get that started. Using AI is a good way to do that. And then marketing and sales, absolutely a great way to do it. There's a ton of ways that you can use AI at the back end with tools to help the customer experience be a better one with every interaction you have with your users. AI is a big business, right? The reason why we're talking about this is because companies are spending a ton of money on AI. I think this is even a little bit of a low number, but right now the current trends say that by 2027, we will be seeing global spending of AI-centric systems at over 500 billion. Personally, I think that's actually higher. It is a very massive investment that's currently going on with companies, right? Where they're saying, hey, how can we use what is AI? Where can we use it to? How do we get it actually started in our processes? So why bother learning about AI, right? It's the impact, right? For one, there's a lot of efficiencies that you can get out of AI. For example, I had Copilot create this image, right? I could have gone online, searched through a bunch of different images, try to pick one, but instead I just gave Copilot the base slide. I said, hey, why don't you create a slide that looks like XYZ? And then it gave me that, and I thought it was good, so I used it, right? So that is a very, very quick and easy way to efficiently use AI. It definitely does well in automating manual, time-consuming tasks. It does free you up to do other more important work, right? The work that humans need to do, the work that only humans can do. that is what the end goal should be in a lot of cases on how you use AI from an efficiency perspective. And then from an innovation perspective, because AI is able to analyze vast data sets, right? The massive amounts of data, petabytes, terabytes, gigabytes of data, right? But we're looking more at terabytes, petabytes at this point, and even higher. It really can uncover insights and patterns that no human could, right? There's just no way. So this will help you to create new products, services, and revenue opportunities, right? As companies are using AI to figure out what the heck they're doing with all this, this data that they have, they're starting to find interesting ways to bring products to market that are providing revenue. So let's get into, as you, a user, are using an AI tool, one of the most important things, right, when you're going from being a user to a collaborator is, how are you asking the AI tool that you are using a question on what you're trying to do so that you can actually get an output that makes sense and that isn't a waste of time, right? Because the whole point of using some of the AI tools that we use, like chatbots, ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever, we want the product to provide us, or the tool to provide us with what we're looking for. So if you want to, get a presentation for XYZ, you want it to give you something that makes sense. And if you don't ask it correctly, it will not. It will give you what it thinks it should give, and it may not be the right thing. So we're going to get into that in a sec. So the first thing to think about is, in order to get an output, you need to input. And an input is called a prompt. So if you ever hear like the terminology prompt being thrown around, it basically just means, how am I asking the AI model to provide me with a result or an output, right? It is 100% the key to unlocking the tool's full potential. So there are a couple of frameworks out there. I'm just going to go over this one. It's called TCEPFT. And I'm just going to get into the different areas. So this particular framework is a structured way to write prompts that will give the AI the context and clarity it needs to give you a good response back, right? So the more clear and concise you are with asking a question, the question or the ask to the AI tool, the better result it will give you. So the first area that you want to think about is, what's the task? What is it that you're asking it to do, right? So you want to be specific. What is it that you want it to do? So if you wanted to write something for you, to summarize something for you, to brainstorm or translate, you need to be clear on asking it to do that. You want to give it context, right? You want to provide the background. So let's say that you're in marketing and you want to brainstorm ideas for an ad. You're going to say, I am a marketing executive in a, XYZ company. I want to come up with some ideas on an ad campaign for XYZ product. That product is going to, to be used by high school and college students that need to get ideas on how to write something. I don't know, whatever. So you're going to give it as much context, right? You're going to tell it what the audience is that you want this output for, what it is that you're trying to actually accomplish. And you need to give it those details so that the AI model at the back end can actually analyze this the right way and provide you with the output you need. And E stands for an exemplar. It's like giving an example, right? Show the AI what a good answer looks like. So if you have some ideas on what it is you're looking for, and you know what the end state should be, provide the end state to it as you're asking it the question. The persona is like I just said, right? So I said, I'm an ad executive trying to get, some ideas for marketing the tool. The audience is going to be high school and college students. Right away, the AI model at the back end is going to understand that it should not be providing overly complex answers back, because the audience that is going to get whatever this product is not going to be as savvy as, say, an adult user that's in a company that's whatever, or it's going to be complex enough that it's not going to be like it's for a child, right? Because you're asking it for high school and college level. So you want to give it if you're thinking specifically about a certain audience, you want to actually mention that in the prompt. The next format is define the structure. You want a list. You want a table. You want an email. I want to write an email to my manager to give me a raise. And I want to talk about how XYZ experience that I have. I've been doing this, and this. I want an email that's going to be firm, but friendly or whatever. And, like you want to give it as much information about the format of what you're looking to get back from the prompt as much as possible, as close as possible to it, so that you can get the right output back. And then the tone, like I just said, I want a very formal email. I want an enthusiastic email. I want a friendly email. I want a not so friendly email, but in a stern but not rude email. It actually it does understand those nuances and will provide you with its closest guess on what you're saying. And if you don't like it, you can actually say, hey, this is a little too stern. Let's make it a little more friendly, or a little more enthusiastic, whatever it is that the tone, it doesn't sound right, you can actually adjust it with your second prompt. But the first prompt that you're given, it should actually provide as much information as possible so that you get a good answer the first time around and you don't have to waste too much time asking it questions over and over again to get the right output that you're looking for. So I'm going to just go over a couple of examples here. So the basic prompt that you might give it if you don't know what prompting is saying, hey, write an email to my team about the new project. Okay. It's going to make a best guess for you, right? And that email is probably not going to be what you're looking for because there's no context here. There's no ask of tone. There's no details, nothing, right? So it's just going to give you a very, very simple best guess, very generic, run-of-the-mill response that you're going to be like, nope, this is not what I'm looking for. So if you use the TCEPFT prompt, right, this looks a little better, right? So it goes, you are a supportive project manager. Supportive meaning that it's going to be an enthusiastic email, right? That's the P, right? Write a brief, enthusiastic email, right? TF to the marketing team about the Project Nova launch, right? Because we want to know what project we're talking about too. Like what the heck? There's like 5 projects, 10, 20, 100 projects that you're working on. Let's get specific. You want to announce the 3-day kickoff workshop next week and ask them to clear their calendars, which is a task. When the output comes out from this, this prompt that you submitted, it is going to give you a pretty concise email that you are probably going to have to do very minimal. You might even be able to just do yourself, quick update and send it off. But if you did the first one, you're going to spend some time trying to get the right response back from that tool, which is a way it's counterproductive to what you're trying to do with your AI tools. So I know I'm almost out of time here, so let me just speed it along. The second example, it's a brainstorming example. It gives you, if you say, give me some blog post ideas, it's going to give you very generic ideas that you might have already thought of, right? As the regular human being that knows what blogs are, right? But if you give it the second one, which is you are a creative marketing expert, my company sells eco-friendly coffee beans, give me 5 catchy blog post titles that are witty and curious. Here's one I like. Is your morning coffee harming the planet? And then it will give you a response back that's much closer to what you're looking for than some generic 5 ideas that you already, or certain amount of ideas that you already have or know, right? So these are the ways that you can start rethinking how you prompt your AI tool so that you get something really good out of it. And we are, I'll get into this, but we are going to have some sessions in the near future on, what career planning looks like with AI, right? And we're going to, have someone go over some of the ideas that you can have about how to write resumes or rewrite your resumes using AI tools. So look forward to that. Look out for that. But that is next step in terms of some of the cool ways that you can use prompting to give you some amazing results back that are going to save you a lot of time. So what are the future trends with AI, right? What's next? So generative AI is going to be everywhere, right? It's going to be beyond text. It's almost, or it's pretty much already there, this right here, right? We're creating code, images, video, and audio as a standard part of business. A standard part of business is not quite there yet. Not every company is doing this because they're a little afraid of some of the things we talked about. with AI, the guardrails need to be there. They want to make sure information, the data that they're providing, the tools aren't going to get leaked and used by other companies or things like that. So we're almost there, but not quite there yet. The AI Copilot, 100% there. In fact, Copilot is the name of pretty much the or sort of name of what Microsoft uses in their 360 product set, right? But AI will become a daily assistant for most workers, augmenting skills rather than just replacing tasks. And then AI governance, right? The more we're using AI, the more need there's going to be for governance around ethics, safety, fairness, and transparency. So our key takeaways here, right? AI is a broad concept for smart machines or of smart machines. ML is the engine behind a lot of the different tools that we're using from the AI side of the house. Not all, but a lot. LLMs are the next word predictors that create human-like text, and prompting is a skill, right? Clarity and context, like that TCEPFT. I can't believe I'm saying that so well. Will give you much better results than just very generic ask. And we are at the questions mark. We were supposed to give you 20, we got 15. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I am here to help answer if I can. But thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Gloria. That was absolutely fantastic. You know, as a deputy director here at Raices, as a nonprofit, right, we need to wear a lot of hats. So the persona aspect of that P really helps a lot when you're trying to get things through and you want to focus on just being able to be operational and not make a lot of decisions. My thoughts can be pretty messy sometimes when I'm brainstorming. So having it distill those thoughts for me makes me also a better communicator, right? So yeah, as you mentioned, we want to have some questions to answer the folks that are joining us. So feel free to drop them in the chat, raise your hand. We're more than happy to answer them. And then let me see. Alrighty, so I got a question for you. As a leader, right? You've got over 25 years in experience. You've been in different roles from sales over to technical. Why would you say it's important for our community to learn about AI now instead of waiting for it to be perfect, be perfect?
Well, the first thing is understanding the lingo, right? Understanding, like as you saw, there are so many different areas of AI. You want to, for the community, as you are trying to either get a job or do certain things, AI is the biggest trend there is right now, right? If there's no escaping it. So I don't say embrace it fully without thinking about, like you got to do it with eyes wide open, but there's a need for you to embrace some of it because it is something that most companies are going to use. And whether you are an end user, right, you're a customer of a company, or you are working for a company, those AI tools are going to be there for your use and are going to be very difficult for you to avoid. So I say, eyes wide open, make sure that you're careful about what you're doing when you're using tools, think through that, but embrace it. I mean, at the end of the day, when they work well, they're amazing, right? There's so many amazing tools out there that can help you with so many different aspects of your day-to-day. I prefer not to overly depend on anything, but at the same time, it's great to use what you have there to make your life easier. So that would be my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, absolutely. We have another question for you regarding bias, right? In order to keep AI unbiased, right? How, given the framework and how it works, what part of that framework do you kind of like tweak in order to help, the models learn, non-bias?
Let's go back here, right? So context, right? Context, the tone. Those are a couple of the areas that I think seem to be where we hit the snags, right? Diverse data being fed into the models that is actually looked at from a hygienic perspective. There's something called data hygiene where you are you are making sure that you are you're feeding anything that you're using to analyze data that is good and not corrupt, right? And so it is a little difficult when you're looking at the bigger models because they're actually using things like the internet to at the back end to feed them, right? And like I said, there are so many biased websites and like, you know, forums and blah blah blah. There's gonna have to be a lot of work that needs to be done around the context, controlling the context, you know, giving it examples of good answers, like the exemplar, giving it examples of good answers versus not so good answers, right? So that it could learn that there are certain things that it should avoid when it's providing answers. And it's okay to put guardrails. And, you know, sometimes we run into those guardrails. If you ask a certain question, it says, I am not able to provide that answer, right? Because XYZ. That's okay. That's okay. We want to try our best. And it's, again, a human nature thing, right? We want to try our best to be as unbiased as possible with the data that we're allowing the LLMs to or the models in the back end to learn from, so that they're able to provide unbiased or as least biased as possible answers back. I know it's a very not necessarily the most direct answer, but it's the best answer I can give you, right? Because there are a lot of realities around how things learned that we're still working on.
No, absolutely. And then, like, you had a slide, you have a question on the future of work. You talked about generative AI being anywhere, creating code, images, video,
Yep.
as a standard part of business. How do you see this changing this changing technology regarding entry-level jobs? We have a lot of conversations here at Raíces, right?
Yes.
Regarding the impact that AI might have on the workforce.
Right. Unfortunately, it's not a very you cannot avoid the impact, right? So what I always say, and this is the way that I've actually run my career for the 27 years now of a career. I've worked way more than that, right? But where I started, you know, my true kind of like IT, telecom, cybersecurity, and now cloud kind of career, is you definitely have to stay very, very, very aware of the trends that are going on around you. So one of the things you have to do is actually learn and use the tools, right? It is so much easier to go into an entry level, and there are going to still be entry level opportunities in the job market. That's never going to go away 100%. Everybody's in a different journey, or different companies are at different journeys in the AI journey, right? Like some companies are like embracing AI completely and some are not. They're embracing it enough that it's for very minimal things, but not for the full, like, I'm going to replace every worker with AI type thought process. No, that's very few. So you are going to have to do some work, I would say, to any entry level person, in making sure that you understand what the technologies are that you can help bring to that you can help a company that you're applying to actually use or actually improve, right? So if you understand what Gen AI is, if you understand the LLMs, if you understand the good and bad of it, right? And you can have a conversation when you're having an interview, right? Where you can talk about, I use these certain products and I've learned blah, 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 blah. And here's where I see myself helping to improve some of the things that go around this technology. That sounds a lot more impressive than you not having an idea about what some of these things are, right? Even if you're not 100% right, even if you are not, if it's 100% related to what you're applying to, being able to at some point bring that up in the conversation because you actually do understand it will get you very much ahead of some other person that does not embrace or try to understand the newer technology. So I don't think it's going to replace every job. There are going to be some things that are going to be replaced, but there are a lot of things that we just end up using the tools to help us do the job better. So I would say that continue to, diligently, that word is difficult, diligently, scrub your resume, look out for new skill sets that you need to kind of brush up on. Maybe go take a class online. There's so many resources that you can take. Maybe go for an entry-level cert, right? With every single large cloud provider has an entry-level cert for AI, right? That will teach you
Mhm.
the basics of AI along with their product sets. And you can just take a couple days out of your month to spend, and or hours every other day or whatever, or the weekend or something, and you can just learn on some of these. Go ahead and study and learn on some of these newer technologies through a actual cert that they have, and you will have a cert under your belt plus the knowledge. So I would say keep on doing the things that you normally need to do with your with your job search, but add a couple of new kind of little tasks here and there that are going to keep you up to date on the technologies that are out there so that you can talk about them if you need to.
No, absolutely.
Because
You
I'm
know
still doing
that.
it. I'm still doing it. I have 27 years. I'm still doing it. I still go take certs that I don't have any need for, but that I want to learn the
No.
technologies, So trust me, I tell you, it's never too soon
So,
to start that.
so you know what? That actually brings a good question. One thing, tying onto what you just said about curiosity, in sales, like we had obviously always be closing.
Right.
Um, I kind of like modeled that into my new life and this career now that I'm having with Raices, and to always be curious, right?
Yes. Yes.
And I think that applies both in cybersecurity, life, and
Yes.
then now specifically AI. But to
Yes.
your point on career shifts and entry level and meeting people where they are, we have different journeys going on with our community in Raices. We have new students who are shifting careers later in
Yep.
their lives.
Yep.
At the same time, we have fresh out of college students, that are bright-eyed
And bushy tail.
and
That's
looking
right.
and bushy-tailed, right, coming on. So in general, for students, for people looking to change careers that might feel like, you know what, I'm already late in the game to get into tech,
Nope.
or is it too late to start
No.
learning right now?
Absolutely
Like,
not. Absolutely the best time ever to learn. You have so many resources now to learn.
mm,
And I am a lifetime learner. Until the day I die, I would be learning something new. I have had so many shifts in my career. This is why I say this from personal experience, right? When I had this shift from, kind of like just generalized IT to cyber, as soon as I started, we were in the same company I started. I actually went back to community college to learn some, the technology around cyber, because it was an interesting field to me. And I didn't really know the lingo. I didn't know I had no idea about some of the technologies. So I said, well, what can I do to get a little bit of a jump start on that? And I went back and took a couple of community classes courses, which turned into a cert from the school, right, in cyber. And then I ended up getting a bunch of professional certs. And you don't have to necessarily go that route, but you can certainly take advantage of all the free information that's out there, all the courses. There's a million courses. Even if you go to your local library and get a card, right? I give this recommendation to so many people. You get a free card from your local library. They have on the websites links to sites that actually provide training for different technologies that you're interested in.
mm-hmm,
And it's
yep,
never too late to learn. I mean, I got into Google in my 40s,
mm-hmm,
right? I got into Google in my 40s. I'll be very proud to say it, right? I about faced my career quite a few times in my 27-year span. And every time I had to figure out how I was going to do that, right? And so I
mm-hmm.
did, right? I went, I did what I had to do. And so um it does not matter if you are a return, like a bright-eyed bushy-tailed, which I wish I was at this day and age with all the cool things that are going on with technology, but doesn't matter if you're like new to the work world, or if you have been 30 years in the business, right, doing different things. Where there's a will, there's a way. You can definitely take advantage of all the free resources out there. It doesn't even have to be paid for you to get into the area that you have an interest in. And that's how you build,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then you use that experience that you have just as a just more even more of a betterment for the org that you're going to join, right? And you have to just sell them on that. That's part of the process, unfortunately, when
Yep.
you interview for jobs. But it's never too late. It's never too late. So
Beautiful.
you're asking the wrong person to be like, What's
No,
interesting? No, no,
I think
I
they were
can't.
asking the right person. I think they were asking the right person because
Yeah, yeah,
sometimes
yeah.
you need to hear it, right?
Right, right, right.
And that's a whole different topic, which would be like ageism and technology and all that kind of
Right,
fun stuff. But we want to leave it in a positive note, right? And those were
right.
amazing words. So I want to thank you, Gloria, for sharing your time with us today. Everybody that showed up, the questions. Again, this is the first episode of many. Our next installment is going to be in January. And we'll do a couple of surveys to see what you want to learn about, and feel free, we're going to pick your brains a little bit to provide the content that actually you might find of value, right? So to that end, Gloria, anything else you want to say before we
Well,
close this up?
just thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm really happy I got a chance to hopefully share some nuggets of knowledge.
Yeah,
And yeah, have a good everyone have a good rest of your day.
beautiful. Well, thank you so much. Echoing that, everybody had a great day, and looking forward into seeing you on the next one.
All right. Thank you.